Hey guys, it's Caden. Welcome to another Autism Digest interview, where today we have an amazing individual. He's the nephew of Howard Shore, who you might know from composing Titanic, and he's a composer in his own right. And you might have heard some of his compositions in movies like Scooby-Doo and the WWE Mystery, which I personally grew up with. Star Wars. I think there was a show called Go-Go he did. Yeah, Go-Go something. I don't know the specific title. He is Ryan Shore. Thanks for coming on, Ryan.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. My first question for you is, for those that may not know you, do you mind telling us your own story in your own words?
Yeah, of course. The show that you were thinking of is Go-Go Corey Carson, which is an animated TV series for Netflix. And I should mention just one quick thing that my Uncle Howard, you'd mentioned scored Titanic. That was actually scored by James Horner, one of my favorite film composers. But my Uncle Howard Shore, you might have been thinking of Lord of the Rings. He scored all the Lord of the Rings movies and a whole bunch of other ones. And Howard is a huge influence for me, and it's probably a good touching point for me to talk about my background. I started music when I was 11 years old. I took up saxophone, and one of the reasons I was influenced to do that was my Uncle Howard. He played saxophone, and I really got into music right when I was in 7th grade. And Howard gifted me a keyboard for my 13th birthday, which was not long, after 7th grade. And that was the first time I ever had a keyboard in the house. And I absolutely loved it, just exploring sounds and harmony. And I really got into music when I was in high school, playing in all the different bands, jazz bands, concert bands, symphonic bands, all state, all county, all kinds of different stuff. And I did a lot of music programs during the summers. And so I went to Berklee College of Music, Eastman School of Music, Jamie Aebersold jazz camps, Interlochen, and I was just really immersed in music. I was just loving it in high school. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it full time when I graduated from high school. I was still into academics, and Berklee College of Music, where I had done a summer program in high school, offered me a full scholarship to attend, after graduating high school, so that I could do my all of my collegiate studies at Berklee. And with that scholarship, it made the decision very easy. So I moved to Boston, and I figured I would explore music for a year. And I thought if it turned out not to be the right thing for me, then maybe I would know after a year. And I know that after that year, I never thought about doing anything else. I just absolutely loved it. And so I did my 4 years at Berklee. I majored in film composing. And then when I graduated, my plan was to move out to Los Angeles. This was where I am right now. And my Uncle Howard called me up, and he offered me some employment. So I ended up moving to New York City in order to work for Howard, because he lives in New York. And that's really what started my career professionally, was working for Howard and living in New York. I was working on Broadway. I was playing my instruments. I was on tour. I was composing, doing a lot of different types of things and working for Howard. And after 8 years of living in New York, maybe about 12 movies with Howard, and I'd already scored my first short films and my first independent movies. Then I moved out to Los Angeles, and I've been out in LA now for about 22 years. So that's kind of my very quick overview of my background.
And it's a good one. 22 years in LA is impressive. I would personally kill to live in LA. Yeah. My next question for you is, have you had any experiences working with neurodivergent artists in your career? If so, what were those like? And how can employers use your experiences as a blueprint to help autistic individuals gain employment?
Yeah, I definitely feel as though I've worked with people who are neurodivergent. But I will say, I think there are probably people that may be on the spectrum that maybe I didn't know, because not everybody communicates it. But I know that when I was at Berklee, there were a few students who were autistic, and it was known. It's like maybe they had a someone helping them, or or they just let people know, this is who they are. And the beautiful thing about Berkeley, and I'll just say music in general, is when you have that common language of music, that's really what we're all talking about, and how we're interacting with each other, and we're speaking this language of music, and we're making music together. And I love that, because it sort of turns off all these other labels, like if someone has autism, or if somebody speaks a different language, or they're from another country, or they have a different cultural background. It's kind of not the prominent thing. It's like we just communicate as musicians. And so some of the people that I've worked with in the past that I knew were autistic, sometimes they're brilliant musicians. And that's how we met, was through music. And so, obviously I assume that was their strength, and that's, why we're working together is in music. So, so I never really think too much about the autistic part of it. I really just think about the music part of it. And that's sort of been a great equalizer, for my experiences, working with autistic musicians.
And that's a good one to have. I love the answer you said about music being a language that can seal out all the unnecessary stuff of the world. I think of it as a language in a way too. Because when you're playing music, like a guitar or composing a film, everything bad in the world is just shut out, because everyone's focused on the same thing, composing something amazing. So that was a really great answer, which leads to my next question. What resources would you recommend that the music industry provides in order to foster awareness about the neurodivergent community?
Well, there are a lot of wonderful organizations within the music community, and there are different, organizations. For example, the Recording Academy. I'm a member of the Recording Academy. I've been a member, I think, for 20 years. I'd have to look up how long it's been. The Recording Academy has the Grammy Awards. They give out the Grammys every year. And but the Recording Academy does so many wonderful things aside from just the awards. They do outreach programs, they do advocacy, they do education, they do ways for members to meet each other. There's different committees, there's different events, and there's ways for people who are like-minded to be able to meet each other and get to know each other and support each other. I'm also a governor for the Recording Academy out here in Los Angeles, so I get to see firsthand these types of initiatives. But the Recording Academy is just one of them. There's lots of different communities. There's the Society of Composers and Lyricists. There's one called ASMAC, which is American Society of, I think it's Musicians, Arrangers, and Composers. I might be wrong on what those letters stand for, but there are all these different wonderful organizations out here, and there are ways for people to connect and get to know each other. One of the things that we chat about often, at the Recording Academy, is how to be inclusive of people of all different backgrounds. And so I would imagine that if there was a large enough community of autism, autistic people within music, that there might be ways for them to connect, perhaps through those organizations or adjacent to those organizations. And if they're not, I will say that I would highly encourage anyone to start it, to start a group, and perhaps even tie it in with another organization.
I absolutely agree. There should be groups like that, and I'm glad that the Recording Academy especially has taken the initiative to make people feel included, because there's a bunch of different musicians in this industry that are neurodivergent. Kanye West, the Jefferson Airplane lead singer, Cat Stevens. I've had a lot of neurodivergent musicians on here, and it's honestly one of my favorite things about what I do, because you never know who's going to be involved with neurodiversity in some way. It could be someone you've grown up on. So I definitely like that answer. My next question for you is, what's your advice to anyone, neurodivergent or not, that wants to make it in the world of music?
That was an easy one. So what I would say is to firstly learn everything you can about your craft. And so in music, that would be any aspects of music that apply to directly to what you're doing, if you're an instrumentalist or if you're a composer. But I would, or an engineer or an arranger or a conductor or any aspect of music, different styles. But I would also recommend actively doing it. Like you is one thing to learn about it, but there's so much more you learn just by doing. And you can go to school for it, which I did, but there's nothing that substitutes actual experience. So there's a lot of people in our industry who music or otherwise, just within the arts, people say, I'm a director, I'm a writer, I'm an actor, I'm a musician. But the most important thing is that when you label yourself as those things, that's actually an action, that a composer composes and an actor acts and a director directs. And so it's important to actually be on the scene and doing that. And that's a great way to learn your craft and gain experience, meet people, build a real, build connections, and ultimately to build a career that way.
I absolutely agree. Not just with music or the arts, but with any industry, really. It's all about the connections you make. My last question for you is, what does the future hold for you? Do you have any film projects you're scoring that you want to promote?
Yeah. I actually just finished scoring 3 films. One of them just came out about maybe 6 weeks ago or so, a movie called Bride Hard. That it's a really fun action spy comedy movie that stars Rebel Wilson. And that just came out in theaters, I think maybe 2 months ago. Really fun score, a lot of rhythm section and guitars and non-orchestral sounds and contemporary sounds. So that's one movie, and that one already came out. I have 2 movies that I just finished, and they're going to be coming out in the coming year. One of them is a movie called I, Object, which is a really beautiful movie that is written and directed by Andrew Niccol. Andrew Niccol is a wonderful writer. He wrote the movie The Truman Show. And this is a movie, it's a coming of age story for a young boy. And it's a very emotional score, very orchestral, but with a lot of subtle non-orchestral textures that are within it, very thematic. And it's really a beautiful story about a boy who sees the world very differently than others. So that's another one. And then the other movie that I just finished scoring, literally about a week ago, I finished scoring a movie called Champagne Problems. And it is a romantic comedy for Netflix, shot in France. And it's a really heartfelt film, very thematic. I wrote, I think, about 5 different musical themes within it. And I know that'll be coming out on Netflix, but I'm not sure exactly when. But those are the ones that are coming up for now.
And all of those sound great. I'll be sure to check them out. Anyways, that's going to do it for this interview, guys. Thank you so much to Ryan for coming on and sharing his perspective. If you guys want to see more amazing interviews, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Autism Digest channel. Check out our August issue that came out by going to autismdigest.com. And stay tuned for the audio file to be posted on our Spotify. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.